There are villages in Buckinghamshire that the maps no longer show. Not ruins you can visit, not heritage sites with information boards. Just fields, farmland, and in a few cases, someone's back garden. And the strangest part, it isn't that they disappeared. It's why they disappeared. Because almost everything you think you know about lost villages is wrong. Most content you'll find on this topic gives you the same lazy answer: the Black Death. The plague wiped them out, the people fled, and the village was never rebuilt. It's a clean story. It's also, in Buckinghamshire at least, almost never true. Historians used to lean heavily on that explanation, but more recent research has pulled it apart. Across the county, direct documented evidence of plague as the cause of a village's desertion is extremely rare. In many cases, villages that declined after the 14th century did so for entirely different reasons that had nothing to do with the Black Death at all. So, if you came here expecting a medieval horror story, I'm going to give you something better than that. 8 real villages, 8 very different reasons they vanished, and at least one of them is going to make you question whether it was ever really a village in the first place. I've spent a lot of time going through the historical records on this, and what I found kept surprising me, because this isn't just old history sitting still. Archaeologists are still actively finding new lost settlements in Buckinghamshire right now. The official count of deserted villages in the county was 28 back in 1954. By 1997, it had climbed to 83. That number is almost certainly still rising. These aren't cold cases, they're open ones. We're going to go through 8 of them, and I want to save the last one for the end because it genuinely changes the way you think about all the others. Stay with me on that. Let's start with the one that has the most specific, documented, almost forensic story of any lost village I came across: Borstal. It's in the east of the county, and it had been a real functioning settlement for centuries. A church, houses, a community. And then, in the summer of 1645, it was gone. Not slowly, not over decades, in 2 days. Here's what happened. During the English Civil War, a royalist garrison had taken up position in Borstal Manor. Parliamentary forces had them surrounded and were using the besieging position to press in. The royalist commanders made a brutal calculation. The village itself, the houses, and the church were providing cover and useful positions for the enemy. So, they destroyed them. The houses were burned within 2 days. The church was demolished before the 26th of July, 1645. We know the date. We know the reason. We know exactly who gave the order and why. Most lost village stories give you vague language like, "it declined over time," or "it was gradually abandoned." Borstal gives you a date, a decision, and a fire. That's what makes it different from almost everything else on this list. But that's not the only village with a Civil War connection in Buckinghamshire, and the next one has a detail that genuinely stopped me when I read it: Stowe. You've probably heard of Stowe Gardens. It's a National Trust property, one of the most famous landscape gardens in England, visited by thousands of people every year. What almost none of those visitors know is that they are walking through a buried village. Stowe Parish used to contain not 1, but 3 separate settlements within its boundaries. 3 communities. And over time, particularly as the wealthy Temple family expanded their famous estate and landscaped the grounds, those settlements were absorbed, gone. One of them, Stowe itself, may have been destroyed during the Civil War period. The others were simply swallowed by the garden as it grew. So, right now, today, tourists are strolling through the grounds, taking photos of the ornamental lakes and the temples and the follies. And underneath all of that, or at least within those boundaries, are the outlines of places where people lived, worked, and raised families. There's no sign pointing to it, no information board, just grass and history, and a lot of very expensive garden furniture. That's important, but here's something that completely dismantles the idea that all of this is ancient history: Cublington, or more specifically Lockington, which is tied to this area's story. Because one of the villages on the official list of deserted settlements in Buckinghamshire wasn't deserted in the medieval period. Parish register records for Lockington continued as late as 1969. That's not the distant past. That's within living memory. There are people alive today who were born the same year that village effectively ceased to exist as a functioning community. And yet, it doesn't appear on any modern map as a settlement. It's gone. Not because of plague, not because of war, but because of a much quieter and more modern kind of pressure. Which brings me to something that I think is the most underrated reason villages disappeared, and it's not medieval at all. Machines. The Industrial Revolution didn't just build cities, it quietly killed the countryside. Through the 19th century and into the 20th, agricultural work that used to require dozens of hands was increasingly done by machinery. Families who had lived in rural settlements for generations suddenly had no work, and during periods of real economic hardship, especially the Depression years of the 1930s, those families left for towns and never came back. Villages that had survived 600 years of plague, war, and famine couldn't survive the combine harvester and a bad decade for wages. There's something almost darkly funny about that if you think about it too long. The Black Death couldn't finish them off. A tractor did. Now, I mentioned earlier that the last village on this list is going to change how you think about all the others. We're getting close to that. But first I want to show you something that changes how you think about what a village even was. Just north of Aylesbury, there's a site that historians refer to as Quarrendon. And when you look at it closely, you find not one deserted village, but three. Quarrendon 1, 2, and 3. 3 separate lost settlements crammed into a very small patch of land, almost on top of each other. And that raises an obvious question. How does that happen? How do 3 communities end up overlapping like that? The answer is that the medieval idea of a village was nothing like the postcard image we carry around in our heads. We picture a tight cluster of cottages around a village green, maybe a church, a pub, a duck pond. But places like Quarrendon and another site called Hardmeald show something historians call a polyfocal settlement, which is a fancy way of saying the village was actually several loose clusters of houses spread across a distance, connected to each other, but not in any neat, compact way. It was more like a collection of small hamlets that shared an identity and a name than one unified community. So, when you're looking at a lost village on a map, you might actually be looking at 3 or 4 distinct clusters that have all vanished separately. The complexity of what was lost is so much greater than the simple label suggests. And speaking of things being more complicated than they first appear, not every village that ended up on the lost settlements list actually disappeared in the way you'd expect. Upper Winchendon is a good example. It's classified not as deserted, but as shrunken, meaning it still exists in some form, just dramatically reduced from what it once was. And some other settlements in Buckinghamshire are listed as migrated or shifted, which means they were deliberately moved by a landowner, or they drifted gradually over time to a new location. In some cases, a wealthy estate owner simply decided they wanted the land the village was sitting on, and the villagers were relocated, not killed, not driven out by famine, just evicted because someone wanted a private park or a more picturesque view from their manor house. That's a different kind of loss. Less dramatic maybe, but in some ways more unsettling because it was entirely deliberate and entirely legal. If you're finding this as fascinating as I did, there's a related video I'd strongly recommend watching after this one. I'll link it at the end. And if you want more of this kind of deep dive local history, subscribing means you won't miss the next one. Now, let me give you the twist. Buckinghamshire. It's on the official list. It's been studied, cataloged, referenced in academic papers. It is officially a deserted settlement in Buckinghamshire. There's just one problem. It may never have been a village at all. 7 of the settlements on the 1968 official list are now classified as doubtful, and Buckinghamshire is one of them. The evidence suggests it was never larger than the couple of farms that are still present on that land today. It didn't shrink, it didn't get burned down, or relocated or swallowed by a garden. It was just always a handful of farms, and somewhere along the way, someone looked at the historical records and thought it might have been more than that. Another site, Hughenden, has a similar problem. The suggestion there is that settlement in the parish was always dispersed rather than a nucleated village, meaning there was never one central community to lose in the first place. So, here's where that leaves us. We started this video by debunking the Black Death myth, the assumption that plague is the default explanation for every lost village. And now, we're ending it with something even more interesting, which is that some of the lost villages people get excited about may never have existed as villages at all. They're a category error, a historical misread, Not a tragedy, just a mistake in the paperwork. That doesn't make the real ones any less real. Borstal was burned in 2 days in the summer of 1645, and we know the exact date. Stowe's buried communities are underneath one of England's most visited gardens, and almost no one who walks through it has any idea. Lockington survived until 1969 and then quietly stopped existing. And somewhere north of Aylesbury, 3 separate communities have been stacked almost on top of each other in a field that most people drive past without a second thought. The official count of lost settlements in Buckinghamshire was 28 in 1954. It's 83 now. Archaeologists are still finding more, which means somewhere in this county, right now, there are almost certainly villages we haven't found yet. Communities that existed, that had names and people and histories, and that we simply haven't noticed are missing. That's the thing about lost villages. The losing isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's a fire, sometimes it's a tractor, and sometimes it's just time, moving quietly over everything until one day someone looks at a field and realizes there used to be something there. If this is the kind of history you want more of, the next video is already waiting for you.